All right. How's everybody doing? Good to see a lot of regular faces, some new faces.
Get the reflection off my hair.
Just a quick housekeeping thing. If you need to use the restrooms, they are out front when you first came in. There's one that says man and one that says women. You guys can pick which one you want to use. If you want more pizza, soft drinks, coffee, cookies, feel free to get up and grab that in the back. But again, it's good to see everybody. It's good to start a new year. Last year was the first full year that we ran the group, and throughout the year we had over 200 different people come to a meeting, which is cool because it just opens up the door for a lot of networking. A lot of people did deals together, sold houses, did some rehabs together. A couple of people did some lending things together, so it's just a good opportunity to be able to meet new people and get some deals done. So, who was at the December meeting? Awesome. Just to kind of give you an update, I know we did the two benefit things. A lot of you brought food in, a lot of you brought gift cards. For food, we had just over 180 different items that we were able to donate to Caring Hands up in Hammond for their soup kitchen. That really helped them quite a bit. And then for the lady in Hammond who had a house fire, we gave her, I forget the total amount, but I want to say it was around $450 in gift cards. Meijer, Walmart, and a lot of investors and people around town have donated material to help rebuild the house. The gift cards are really designed to help her once she gets in a house, restock the pantry. A lot of stuff that you use on a day-to-day basis we take for granted: toilet paper, toothpaste, towels, all of that stuff. So she was super, super thankful about the generosity that you guys were able to show to her. So a lot's gone on in the last month since our last group. Anyone close on anything, sell anything, buy anything, put anything under contract? I know someone did something. Al probably did something.
I bought like 3 houses.
Only 3? Al works like nonstop.
Close on a 4-plex.
Okay. Anyone else buy anything, sell anything, flip anything, put anything under contract?
I had a cash buyer on a Maribel house I listed. So from rehab, from the date of purchase to the date of sale,
Okay.
it was like 7 weeks. Rehab and everything.
That's a fast turnaround.
Yeah.
That's a good turnaround. Anyone set any big, courageous 2018 investment goals? Someone? I should just give you the mic. How many houses are you going to do this year?
Between 40 and 50.
Okay. Who's going to do at least one house this year? Most of the group. 10 houses? 1, 2, 3. There you go. Awesome. The purpose of our group, and who's here for the first time? And it's January. I'm not a public speaker. I'm rusty. I took most of the last half of December off because I had a baby and my kid doesn't like to sleep. So I've been up since 4 today. So if I struggle today, it's okay if you guys make fun of me. We are recording it, so this is going to be in the history books. But we started this group last year to bring investors together of all different levels. You see people that are going to do 50 houses in here, and then you have people in here that might do 1. So we got a whole bunch of different levels of investors in here. But the whole idea is to provide an environment of relevant real estate investment education, as well as a place to grow your personal network. The speakers that we have lined up for this year are going to be great. The speakers last year, we had attorneys in here, CPAs, guys that flip 50 or 60 houses a year talking about their systems and their processes. We had different people from some of the different town building departments come in and talk. So just like last year, we got a good slate of speakers scheduled to talk this year. Benefits of the group, the biggest thing is just networking with experienced investors. I've been doing this for 2 years. A lot of the initial relationships that I made with investors, both people that I wholesale to, people that I lend money to, are people that I met in this group and then the other group that's in Maryville. The education through the monthly speakers, and then again, it's just a place to get connected, the lawyers, the contractors, accountants, landlord, etc. And then also it's a great place to get deals done. I talked to a lot of people in December that, again, lent money to people in the group, borrowed money from people in the group, went in together on deals, bought wholesale deals from, sold stuff, agents that found clients in here. So again, it's just an atmosphere where everybody can get a bunch of stuff done. The fun stuff, the material and content presented today is for educational purposes only. It's not legal advice. Don't take it as such. The content presented is a recollection of the speaker's personal experiences, their successes and or failures. You should consult with your own professionals prior to engaging in any activities presented here. The success of the speaker is not a guarantee that you will be successful as well. Has anyone ever seen that iceberg poster? I have it hanging in my office. It shows the part that's sticking above the water, it says success. Then under it has a different, like 12 different words, hard work, perseverance, just stuff like that. A lot of times at these presentations when people talk, you just see the tip of the iceberg, their success. When you're in Facebook groups and those investor pages where someone shows you a check at closing where they sold the house and they show the check for $150, that's all you see. You don't see all of the sweat, tears, and failures that went into that to make them successful. So just kind of keep that in mind as people are chatting up here. We keep a collection of the past videos going back to June. These are some of the different topics that we have. They're $10 a piece, or if you want to buy 3, it's $25. Just email group at Invest NWI. Tracy, our assistant, will help get those videos to you, collect the payment for that. If you are a member of the group, these videos are free. So again, just email us which videos you're interested in, and we'll send you a link for that. A couple of useful tools and tips to get us started. Who is on the Facebook group page? Awesome. We actually had some pretty good activity on that page this week. A couple of folks asked some questions about leases and stuff like that. There was a good debate that went back and forth on there. But this page is a page where we post the upcoming events and speakers, anything special that we're going to do. Great place for you to post any deals that you have or something that you're looking for, whether you're looking for a private fund lender or something like that. And then lastly, just to ask some questions. Just as kind of a housekeeping rule, if you are going to respond to someone's question, please be respectful. One of the respondents this week didn't like what the person had said, so thought that using some strong language would get her point across. We're adults, we don't need that. So just be respectful in the right way that you respond. All right, so here's another tip that I found out about this week, and this only saved me about $1,000. But has anyone purchased a house, and probably you're going to find this in a situation where it's at like a sheriff's sale, and you go to turn on the water, and the city is like, oh, we have a past due water bill. Before you turn on your water, you got to pay the water bill. Does that happen to anybody? There's a couple of cities that don't lien past due water bills. Cedar Lake's one of them, Hammond's one of them. Hobart and Maryville are really, really good about liening water bills, so this isn't going to be an issue. But what happened to me this week is I bought a house back in December that had been vacant for a while, and I knew that there was going to be a past due water bill. The title company called, and on my closing statement it said 0. I'm like, 2 years vacant, demo list, foreclosure, there's got to be a past due amount. I call and confirm, they're like, there was a past due amount, but we wiped it out. I'm like, good, because I'm buying it. If there's anything due, the seller can pay. Nope, you're good. So we closed on it, and then I wholesaled it to another guy. We closed on it this week. Title company doing what they always do. They called the city to see if there was a past due amount. All of a sudden, there's $975 due. And we're like, what's going on? And they're like, well, because you bought it, and now you're going to fix it up, and the house isn't going to be demoed, we want our money. So I was like, well, that sucks. I guess we'll just have to pay it. But I was talking with another investor, and he's like, no, there's a statute in place that says that if they don't lien the water bill before it transfers, they can't stick it to you. So he sent me this statute, and this part in the middle here, where the star is, basically says a fee is not enforceable as a lien against a subsequent owner of a property unless the lien for the fee was recorded with the county recorder before the conveyance to the subsequent owner. So they never liened that past due water bill when the guy I bought it from owned the house. So legally, they can't stick it to me. But guess what? How many people knew about this before I posted it on the page this week? Okay, one person who's been investing for like 100 years. So how many people just bend over and pay that lien?
Hey, just because I don't have no hair don't mean I'm that old.
Still got teeth, right?
I mean, I can think of dozens of houses I bought, specifically in Hammond and Cedar Lake, at a sheriff's sale, where I've paid hundreds of dollars in past due water bills because I didn't know about this. So they can collect against the previous owner, but if they don't collect within 180 days, it goes on to say that they have to write it off as bad debt. Now, why don't cities lien it? Well, it costs money to lien it, and they know that just because they can bully people around and force people to pay because they don't know about stuff like this, that eventually they're just going to get their money anyway. So, I printed out a bunch of copies of this. Everyone should have one. If you don't have one, they're on the back table. But if you're ever in a situation where they try to stick you with the previous owner's bill, I would just show this. As soon as I mentioned this to them, within minutes, I got the balance that was zero. So they obviously know what they're doing. But this was, I mean, this one little statue this week alone saved us nearly $1,000. Awesome. So every week or every month, we like to have someone come up here who did a flip, a rental, maybe lended someone money and talk about their success or maybe not so successful story. And the reason why I like to do this is who watches those flipping shows at least or has seen them? Most of the time they have these crazy successful shows where they make a bunch of money, right? Especially if they're out west where they're making $100,000 profits and all that. It's never as glamorous as the TV shows make it out to be. Keep in mind, they're taking what's a 6-month flip and condensing it into probably 20, 25 minutes of a show once you take out the commercials, and they have to make it appealing to drive viewership numbers and get the basically for the commercials. So our speaker tonight is Nicholas Smith, and he's going to talk about 4310 Franklin. Is that the East Chicago one? Awesome. Come on up. He's going to talk about when he bought it, what his expectations were, and then what reality was. And I'm guessing it's probably going to be a little bit different from the TV shows.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening. As Adrian said, my name is Nicholas Smith. I am a real estate broker with Macaulay Real Estate, and I do occasional flips. One thing I've always been curious is why realtors don't do more investing, because probably hundreds of realtors in the Sherrville office, and not a lot of them invest. I hear a lot of chatter about it and talk about it, but they never actually do it. So I wanted to at least, get my feet wet. This is actually my second one for last year. I did 2 last year. I stick to East Chicago. A lot of people think you can't do flips in East Chicago, but I stick to East Chicago because that's where I know. I know the market. I used to work for the city of East Chicago's Department of Redevelopment. I used to actually administer the home ownership program for East Chicago. That would be definitely a tidbit of advice I give to anybody. Know the market that you're trying to invest in. You got to know it better than even sometimes we do as realtors. You got to know it like the back of your hand. But this property, there's a delicate balance that you have to run when you are a realtor and you do investing. One thing about it, if my client does express interest in the property or anything like that, I bag off of it. I put my client's interest first. But this one, it was interesting because it was a bank-owned property, local bank here in Northwest Indiana. They owned the property, had it listed for one price. I had a client, we went back and forth with offers. They wouldn't accept it. What they had it listed for was ridiculous. It was stupid. So they wouldn't accept the offer, so it ended up kind of getting squashed. Again, because my client is interested, I didn't go back trying to get it behind the back or anything like that. I just backed away completely from it. But the listing agent called me like 30 days later. Hey, the bank wants to accept your client's offer now. So, good. So I called my client. She's like, let me check, and I get back with you. So they got back with me the next day. Guess what? We don't have the money anymore. We can't buy it. I said, okay, well, I kind of just snuck right in. It was a window of opportunity that was there, and the interesting thing about it was the bank didn't lower the price on the MLS. Because if they had have done that, then of course it would have driven up a lot more competition. But they never lowered the price. So I got it substantially cheaper. Originally what I wanted to do was, because the house I put about, as you can see, purchased it for 70, put 20,000 into it. I actually borrowed those funds for the rehab, and it ended up being actually like 19,978 or something like that. So I don't think you guys will hold me hostage for 20-something bucks. Soft costs, which included I had to pay the investor about $3,500, utility bills, taxes, those type of things was about $7,400 bucks, and I sold it for $125 for a profit of around 27 grand. What I originally wanted to do when I purchased it though was I actually wanted to just wholesale it off to a retail buyer, and somebody that wanted to do like a 203K, a rehab type loan. You know, it would have just freed it up a lot quicker for me. Wouldn't have had to do a lot of work. But the person that I ended up working, because I actually had it sold prior to even starting the renovation. The person that actually ended up buying it wasn't able to qualify for the rehab loan. For whatever the reason, the financing didn't work. So put a little money into it, made probably around the same, you know, if you consider the holding cost, things like that, probably made around the same that I would have made if I would have just sold it in as-is condition. But, you know, 27, that's a pretty good commission for me, so I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining at all.
I mean, who here would have thought you could have made 27 grand flipping a house in East Chicago? I don't think I've paid 27,000 for a house in East Chicago, so that's awesome. Show us some of the before and after pictures, and then what were some things that you might have learned or caught you off guard, or
This
any
was
surprises?
before. One thing that this is the first time I really personally had dealt with was fireplaces. Chimneys, I ended up having to, got the fireplace swept. Found out there was some damage in the inside, but I just ended up disclosing that to the buyer. She's not going to use it as a real wood-burning fireplace anyway, so she was fine with it. But I did end up having to put a liner in the chimney for the furnace and hot water tank. That was the most important one for me, being that you got active carbon monoxide going in and out or out of that one. So ended up doing that. I mean, it really was a somewhat cosmetic flip. These are befores. The cabinets were in good shape. The flooring, ceramic tile was in decent shape. I had to put new flooring, of course, in the living room, repainted it. I had to pretty much redo that bathroom. We refinished floors. You see, these are the afters. Put new flooring down in the living room. Changed the picture window in the living room. Put a new patio door, new light fixtures pretty much throughout the entire house. Appliances throughout, black appliances. Renovated bathroom. Put new flooring, paint, new screen door in the laundry room. And that's pretty much it.
Questions?
Did you do the rehab?
No. No. Not at all. I mean, could I probably do it if I wanted to? I mean, it's something I could acquire that skill, but I don't think it's worth it.
How long did it take the guys to do it?
45 days or so. What the biggest part for me is, when I acquired it, what happened was I flipped another one in East Chicago. I actually sold that one for more because I put that one on the market. I sold that one for like 131.5. I sold that one in May. So I had some money. Just bought a couple of properties out of those funds. I didn't have any idea how I was going to do the rehab, but I was sitting on a couple of properties. But it goes to show, I mean, if you put the effort out first, you'll be surprised the resources and avenues that start finding you. Because this is, I mean, literally, I was on a Facebook group and saw somebody post, "Hey, I got money to lend." Like literally, we saw the property in 2 days, and 2 more days I had the funds to do the rehab.
So the purchase price you had from your other flip?
Right. Right.
Nice job.
Good.
lot of flippers do this, but would you say that we're in a fairly hot market right now? You know, if you're flipping a house and it's on the market more than 30 days, either the rehab's garbage or you're way overpriced. Al, you haven't had a house on the market for more than 30 days, have you? I mean, this stuff is just flying off the market. So know your market. Because there's not a lot of houses for all of the buyers, people are buying stuff that you don't have to give them all the bells and whistles that you would in a market where you have more buyers than houses. And also, keep in mind this is East Chicago. So, cabinets here. Those definitely aren't the most appealing cabinets for today's buyers. However, they're in very good condition. And it's also East Chicago in a market where you don't have the same type of buyer that you would for like a house that I flipped in White Oak Estates in Munster. You know, we're talking two totally different price points. So instead of Nicholas spending $4 or $5 grand replacing the kitchen, he cleaned it up, still got a good buyer. So when you're going into a flip, know your market, know who your buyer is, and don't have the mindset where, oh, I got to redo everything because that's what I've always done. Be flexible with your rehabs. So that's my 30 seconds for that. All right, so main event here. Boom, I'm forgetting the name of the book. Millionaire Next Door, Morgan Stanley. Anyone read that book? He did a bunch of research, and basically he interviewed a bunch of people that had net worths over $1 million. And then he wrote this book about it. And you would think people that make high earnings, you know, from their jobs, doctors, attorneys, and all that, those are the ones that are most likely to have $1 million. But what he found in the book was people that have big salaries typically don't have the high net worth because they spend all their money to impress their clients, golfing, the big houses. I mean, if you're going to go see a financial planner and he lives in a ratty old house and drives a beat up car, you're probably not going to think that he's very successful and want to give him your money. And that was kind of the whole idea with the book, is the people that have all the money aren't the ones showboating you. And one of the people, he broke it into different categories of people that tend to have a bunch of money. A couple that really caught my attention were like janitors. Janitors are allowed to drive beat up vehicles. They don't have to have fancy suits and have fancy watches. Another group of investors specifically that he made a note of were people that own like mobile home parks and storage facilities. And the biggest reason, like when you have a house, you're replacing roofs and furnaces and all that. When you have a mobile home park, most of the time you just own the land. So your maintenance on furnaces and toilets and all that goes out the window because all you have to do is maintain the pads and the infrastructure there. So I met Paul probably about 2 years ago. I was in the process of wholesaling him a 2-unit in Hammond. And then when Hammond told us that was not a 2-unit, and it was only a single-family home, it blew up the whole deal, and I had to find another buyer. But that's how I met Paul, and he started investing back in 2007 with vacant land, and then back in just about 3 years ago, he transitioned into the mobile home parks. I remember talking to him about 2 years ago about that as well. Currently, he owns 2 mobile home parks with about 80 lots, and then this guy's moving. He has 3 that are in escrow to buy, plus a couple more that are in the pipeline. So this year, at least another 100 lots will be added to what he has. So, Paul, if you want to come on up, and if you want to talk from this side of the room, I think I will get more of the video in there. I'll trip on the wires. I don't have the shine today. Any water for you.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Adrian. Yeah, thanks for asking me to come down, and I enjoyed your presentation. A couple things I wanted to know. I too am a realtor in Northwest Indiana. I'm a broker, and I thought the same thing, man. You meet all these real estate agents, brokers. It's like, why aren't these people investing in real estate? It's pretty incredible. They have a front row seat, but they don't do it. Why? Who knows? It's a job to them, I guess. Did you get into real estate brokerage because of after you started investing, or was it like a job, or why did you get into that?
Well, I mean, I was administering the City of East Chicago down payment program. Then I got my license.
Okay. So you were kind of involved in it. Right. You saw it. You wanted to get a little closer to it, make a little more money. Right. Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. So I'm a pipe fitter by trade, local 597. work in Northwest Indiana here for almost, for 19 years. Working all kinds of ignorant hours at these steel mills and refineries. My roughest week was 141 and a half hours. My roughest shift was 55 straight with 2 one-hour breaks. And my craziest year was 3,689 hours at BP. So, to say the least, it kind of makes the home life pretty terrible. All right. I mean, the bank accounts are growing, obviously, right? But what's the point of that? What's the point of having all this money if you're not even there to spend it? So I decided I got to do something else. So I decided that, first of all, I started out when I was probably, I think I was 17 because my dad had to come with me in order to allow me to open a brokerage account. I started trading in the stock market. I was like 17 years old. And I did really well in that. I kind of got to a point where between my pension, $597, and my stock market investments, I was like, if I lose everything right now, not those, but like the money that I had saved up in order to invest, if I lose everything, I'll still be okay. I can still work my job, and I can still invest, retire decently. Okay, so I said, I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna make something happen. I can't keep working all these hours, and for whatever reason, I just couldn't find a 40-hour job. It was either no work or a gazillion hours. So I didn't know what the heck I was doing. 2007, I was like, what do I do? I found a couple people had some land that was pretty cheap, and I'm like, hey, maybe I'll buy some lots and maybe build some houses on them and make a bunch of money, and then who knows what, And I bought these lots, and then what happened. I didn't make any money on them. Because 2008 came around, obviously, so wiped that all out. And then the weird thing was that even though 2008 kind of wiped out the financial institutions and a lot of these investments and a lot of investors, for whatever reason, the refineries just exploded. So I went to work, and the next thing I knew, I looked up and it was like 4 or 5 years later. I'm like, what the heck? I haven't done anything. I said I was going to do this real estate investing, didn't do it. So I decided to basically, I said I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it. I'm not going to look back. I'm not going to ask anybody's permission. I'm just going to do it. So I started researching, and I went through the whole gamut that I'm sure that this room covers: single-family houses, flips, duplexes, fourplexes, giant commercial buildings, everything. I researched everything I possibly could. I came across mobile home parks, and it seemed kind of weird to me, and I completely blew it off the first time I heard about it. But here I was still working, and I kept hearing how the management of it worked, okay? So, I had done some research on management and things like that, and to me it just seemed like the right thing to do. And I'll get into more of the details as we go along here. But I bought my first park, and it took me about a year to find my first park. It was not easy. It was kind of a fluke where I found it, because the place I found it, I've literally not seen another one, and it's been years. So anyway, that's how I got my first park. I just recently bought my second park. We've got a third park that is in escrow that we plan to close on, and that's a really nice park. And then I've got a couple others that I'll probably end up assigning those contracts. And this year is going to be pretty intense, because last year was basically me working out of my job. So June, I walked away from my W-2 job, and I basically said, I'm going to make this work, or I'm going to wipe out my savings accounts and have to go back to work. So I haven't wiped out my savings accounts yet, but I'll tell you what, I'm probably working more hours now than I did then. And like Adrian was telling you about that, that iceberg, my iceberg's really, really small, but down below, it's insanely huge. Because I'll tell you what, the amount of time that you have to put in to make this stuff work up front, it's worth it on the back end. But I'll tell you what, it's pretty insane. I mean, I walked in here, and I see a lot of people a couple other people that I've met before, and you guys all know what I'm talking about. And the people that really succeed, that's those people. I mean, they're always getting after it. They really take it serious. They do what needs to be done. And I love Nicholas's comment about how he bought this property and he didn't know what he was going to do. Because that's the way you got to be. If you waited until you knew everything, guess how far you're going to get? You're not going to get anywhere. Okay? There's a lot of different philosophers and whatnot that put it a lot of different ways. One of my favorites is that you don't have to do everything all at once, but you have to do something at once. And I also like another way of putting it where they say that basically the guy describes the street. When you're driving down the street, you don't have to see your whole path to where you're going. You just have to see around the next corner, right? So he made it happen. That was phenomenal. I mean, I don't flip houses, but if I did, I'd want to do that. Okay? So we're going to talk about mobile home park investing. And hopefully you guys think it's kind of weird too, because maybe that'll get you just a little bit interested in it. And instead of forgetting about it, maybe you'll look into it more and become successful. Because another thing is, investors, you kind of have to be that way. You don't ever want to be like, well, I know about mobile home park investing. I don't really want any of you people to know about it because you're my competition. See, I'm willing to teach anybody anything that I know about investing or anything else, because I think the benefits of that are so much more than the benefits of me keeping any of you that may buy a deal that I could have gotten one day. There's about 45,000 mobile home parks in the United States, which compared to houses and apartments is obviously very minuscule, but that's still more than enough. The largest owner of mobile home parks in the country is Sam Zell. I'm sure all you guys know who Sam Zell is. Sam Zell owns 150,000 lots. That's only about 400 parks. There's 45,000, so there's plenty to go around. So if you guys want to know anything about mobile home parks, obviously I can't cover everything here. I want you guys to feel free to ask. Don't be afraid to ask me questions, okay? This is not like a formal thing where you all got to sit there while I talk and you have to try and store up your questions for the end. Ask them as I go. If you got a question, just shout it out, raise your hand, however you want to do it. Ask questions as we go, with them fresh in your mind. Go ahead.
How do you go about selecting your first park?
How did I go about selecting my first park?
Yeah, or how would you advise? Would it
yeah.
be proximity to you? Would it be price
No.
point? Would it be...
No, if you try to buy parks based on proximity, it makes it real tough. Makes it real tough because, you've got, within a mile, how many apartment buildings do we have? 300, 400? How many houses? 600, 700? How many mobile home parks? Maybe one, if there are any within that proximity. Okay, so proximity is not it. And I'm going to get into more detail about how to evaluate them or how to determine the value on them. But as far as finding them, you guys, you guys already know how to find them. There's no difference. You know how to find a wholesale deal. It's just find out who owns it and get a hold of them and say, hey, I want to buy your mobile home park. Totally different type of people. You're in for a treat when you start talking to people. I can tell you right now, mobile home park owners are the biggest scam artists God ever made. And let me tell you something. They will swindle 100 grand out of your pocket and make you feel like they did you a favor by doing it. This is the way they are. They are not stupid people by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, they want you to think they are because that's one of the weapons in their arsenal. They're amazing people. They're very interesting people. But I will. I'll get into some of the evaluation stuff. It's a lot different. I just want to put that out there. Putting a value on a mobile home park, there's a lot of things that you need to know. If anybody knows how to put a value on commercial real estate, it's completely different from residential. You know how to do residential real estate, and anybody else here who's a realtor, and most of you guys who do the single families, that's why I don't do that stuff, because how do you put a value on it? If I buy a house and there were 5 houses just like it that sold for 300 grand, and I'm about to sell mine, what's it worth? Probably about 300 grand. Now what if Nicholas and Adrian bought up 6 more, just finished all those flips and want to sell them for 200 grand? Now how much is mine worth? Son of a gun. That stinks. So who's controlling my investment? Not me. Now, that's one of the reasons why I like these. Commercial investments, I control. I control my income. I control my expenses. To an extent, of course, I control my value, because value with commercial properties is always based on income. It's your net income. That's how you value. And I'll get more in detail on that. But, thank you for the question. And anybody else, as we go, feel free to ask. So, why invest in mobile home parks? Who here invests in homes that have prices under 60 grand? Do you guys have a hard time selling your homes, finding people who need to buy those homes, who want to buy those homes? Nope. I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't think so. Low-income housing is a huge, huge deal, okay? Take a look at some of these numbers, and obviously if you guys go on the internet, you could probably find some different numbers, but when I researched this stuff, I tried to find some legitimate sources, and these numbers are kind of shocking when you look at them. Here in America, which is, I don't think we're considered the richest anymore, but one of the wealthiest countries in the world, almost 25% of American households make less than $25,000 a year. Now let's break that number down. $25,000 a year. What does that come out to? $2,083 a month. Okay? So with $2,083 a month, what can we do? I don't know who it is. I think it's banks and the government and, you know, pretty much most people who sit down and make a budget. In order for you to be able to easily afford your home payment and still pay, it's pretty well accepted that about 1/3 or so of your gross income should not be exceeded when deciding how much to pay for a home. So what does that end up? With somebody making $2,083 a month, what's 30% of that? It's $625. Okay? So, who's got a 3-bedroom apartment building that they're willing to lease for $625 in a room?
East Chicago.
I should have known by you. There aren't many, are there? Take a look.
Screenshots?
No, absolutely. Be my guest. This is all, I put all this stuff up off the internet, so. Okay, so, what's the average rent for an apartment? 678 square foot, 1-bed apartment, rents for $1,234 a month. Okay? I couldn't find what the 2-bed is, but you know, you can assume it's higher, couldn't you? So, family of 4. 2 kids, maybe 3 kids. 1-bedroom apartment, 600 square foot. I mean, does that work out real well? It really doesn't, okay? And here's the other thing. This average of $25,000, what does that tell you? Because there's some people in this country that make some tall scratch, isn't there? I mean, there's plenty of people that make 3 times that, 4 times that, 10 times that. So what does that tell you about the bottom side to bring that average down, right? So, you think affordable housing, there's a demand in this country? Yeah, you better believe there is, okay? The average home costs $188,900. Your typical mortgage on a house like that is going to be $1,494. Can the 25% of America, can they afford that? No, there's no way. Not possible. It's not possible. Imagine, I mean, look at those numbers and you could see why mobile home parks at $280 a month in lot rent would be a needed commodity or asset class within this country, okay? So, a lot of times people, you know, you say, well, the lot rent is $280. Well, what about the house itself? So, if somebody were to go out and buy a home first of all, many of these homes can be bought for cash. Sometimes these people come across cash. I don't know how, because I look at my tax returns, you know, and sometimes their tax returns, they'll end up with like 6-7 grand. I mean, they have no money throughout the whole year, and next thing you know, they got 6-7 grand. It's like, whatever, sure, I'll take what, bring it on. So anyway, so there are a lot of homes available in that range, okay? A lot of homes. Somebody come in and pay $6,000-7,000, even $3,000-4,000, and now they're only at that $280,000. Now, if you're making $2,000 a month and your home expense is $280, yeah, not bad. We can do that all day long. Even if I bought a newer home and let's say I had a $400 a month mortgage on it, not mortgage technically, but you know what I mean, $600. Usually, I would say, I don't know if it's the average because that kind of data just isn't out here, but I would say most of the home and lot rent that I've seen combined is they try to keep it under $600. They start at these numbers and they work the terms out to make it work. Okay, so that's why I like mobile home parks, because there's a huge need. So what happens when 2008 happens again, even if it's not so bad? So if you've got those $1,200 apartments, where are your tenants going to end up when they all lose their jobs? They're going to end up in my mobile home park. Come on, another 2008? You guys worried about it? I'm not. Okay? So there are about 20 million people living in mobile home parks today, and the need for affordable housing continues to grow. Now, you might say, well, why are there so many empty parks? What about this park over in Hammond? You know, why is it so empty? If there's such a need, why is it so empty? And I'm going to give you a quick answer because I could literally sit here and talk to you for 2 hours about this subject alone. The reason is there's no secondary market for chattel lending. Chattel is, a mobile home is chattel, let's just put it that way. Okay, it's personal property. It's not real estate in a mobile home park. It's not real estate. It's chattel. There's no secondary market for chattel lending, which means nobody wants a loan, right? So what does a bank do? Are they loaning you their money? Well, sometimes you guys. If you're buying your primary residence, is the bank loaning you their money? No, they're not. The bank's not loaning you anything. They're writing up the deal. They're selling the loan to Uncle Sam or whoever else, okay? There is no whoever else to sell these loans to. Therefore, the banks don't want to take on the debt themselves. The banks don't want to have that on their books. The banks, they're high, obviously, they're going to be high risk loans. Most of them are the lenders that do chattel lending at 8 to 20% interest, and they want like 20% down. So we just talked about some of these numbers of where people are today. Can that person come up with 20% down on a $20,000 home? Okay, can they come up with $4 grand and then pay 12? No, they can't. Okay, so that's one of the big things that's happening that I'm going to cover a little bit more. But that's why you see a lot of empty lots. The chattel lending is just not there. It's very difficult to find chattel lending. Okay, supply and demand obviously drives everything. Name anything. Dollar bill. How much can I buy for a dollar bill? It's all supply and demand. How much is his house worth when he's done flipping it? Supply and demand. All right, Adrian talks about our market right now. Why are houses flying off the shelf? Why are we getting 100%, 102% of asking price? Supply and demand. Okay, it's no different. When the supply decreases or stays the same and the demand increases, the value goes up, doesn't it? Here's another reason. Two of the smartest investors in the world are Warren Buffett and Sam Zell. Guess what they invest in? Mobile parks. Sam Zell's the biggest. Technically, Warren Buffett is not a mobile home park investor, but he owns Clayton Homes, which is a mobile home manufacturer, and he also owns 21st Century Mortgage, which is a chattel lender. So he believes in this business. Okay? Demand is going to increase. Who knows what consolidation is? I'll give you an example of what consolidation is. Probably 15 years ago, 15 years ago, you guys can go out and you could find a storage facility, and the guy who owned it was the guy who built it, and you could buy it from him. Everybody's happy. How often do you think that happens today? doesn't happen today. Why? Because Public Storage and 2 or 3 other massive companies own them all. Same thing's happening in mobile home parks. That's consolidation, where the big players pretty much buy up everything. Right now, mobile home parks are still, most of them are still owned by mom and pop who built them, or by their kids who may or may not want them, okay? That's changing in a big way. Excuse me. ELS, you know, I said they own 150,000 lots. Sun Communities, they're up over 100,000, I believe. Yes Communities, the country of Singapore has basically directed their investors to acquire as many mobile home parks as possible, and there is no limit to how much they're willing to spend. They said whatever it costs, just buy them all, okay? Here's the beautiful thing. We talked about some of those empty lots. None of these institutional investors will buy turnaround parks. They only buy stabilized parks. So, good opportunity, right? You buy a park that's not stabilized. Here's another thing with supply and demand. How many new mobile home parks do you suppose are growing in right now? Anybody ever see a new mobile home park pop up?
Linwood.
I haven't either.
In Linwood, it's not new.
What's it look like? I have seen a new mobile home park put in, by the way.
Yeah, it's right off of Torrance and.
Jora Road or whatever.
It's a nice looking
And
mobile.
if I didn't tell you it was a mobile home park, you wouldn't know it was. Because the homes are double or triple or quadruple wide. They have a lot of different, you know, elevations and whatnot. They've got garages. And if I said, that's a mobile home park right there, he said, that's not a mobile home park, it's just a little community. Okay, so I believe that the numbers are, since 2000, less than 20 mobile home parks have been built in this country. Less than 20. Okay? Now,
Why is that?
NIMBY syndrome is a big one. That means not in my backyard. What town, you walk into Hammond and you say, I'm going to put me up a 200 space mobile home park right over there. They're going to say, get out of here before we hire someone to kill you. Okay? So it's not only a matter of nobody wants to live by one, right? Nobody wants to live by one. So the town knows this, and they're all elected, so they're like, oh my God, if we let this happen, these people are never going to elect us again, right? But here's something else, and this is even more important. Let's just take some round numbers. $100,000 house. Here in Indiana, 1% tax, right? How much is that? Let's just say all the taxes go to the city. Obviously they don't, but we're going to talk round numbers. $1,000 in taxes, okay? $1,000 in taxes from that $100,000 house. Now the city's got some money to do things like, you know, have a hospital, right? Send kids to school. So for every house, they get about $1,000. Let's take a mobile home park. Within the same amount of space that that house takes up, you know, I probably have maybe two mobile homes, okay? The taxes on those mobile homes, each, is probably about $70. And for that amount of land that the owner pays is probably, I'd say maybe $300. So they're probably making less than a third per home than if it was a stick-built home, okay? So economically, it kills these cities to have these mobile home parks, all right? It really does put a drain on their resources when 40 kids are going to school and they're only paying as much as maybe 6 kids in the rest of the neighborhood. That's a huge drain. It's a huge drain, okay? Higher and better use. So mom and pop haven't kept up on lot rents because some of them still live in the park, believe it or not, or they live right next door, and a lot of their tenants are their friends, and they've known them for 40 years. And when they moved in 1972, lot rent was $120, and they might have raised it up to maybe $200, okay? The lot rent should probably be more like $400. And if it was, that would probably still be a mobile home park. Remember we said income minus expenses, time your cap rate, that's your value for your commercial property. So if my income is low, and if I if I go to a town where putting up a high-rise is worth millions of dollars to me, but this mobile home park's only worth a few $100,000, well, what's a good developer gonna do? They're gonna wipe those things out, right? And a lot of mobile home parks are in some pretty primo locations, because they went in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, okay? And the city's kind of built up around them. A lot of them are built next to universities, because in the 40s, when the GIs were coming back from the war, they put mobile home parks next to universities so that the GIs could go to school and live in those parks. And those parks came from bases where they had those guys living on bases. So now these guys are going to school, they're living in these parks while they're going to school, while they're on base, and they kind of got used to it. So back then, it wasn't like what it is today. It was kind of a swanky thing, believe it or not. It was not what it is today. People that lived in mobile home parks were not viewed any differently than people that lived in stick-built homes. So higher and better use is wiping out about 1% of mobile home parks in the country every year, which gives us an oligopoly, right? Oligopoly meaning that we have very restricted competition. Let's say I did all this market research and I said this is a fantastic spot for this 8-unit apartment building because there's really not enough housing here. What could happen the next day? You open your doors. Some dude can come in and put in a 100 unit apartment building right next to you. You think the city's going to tell him no? No. Most governments will not stop apartments from being developed, nor will many stop storage facilities. I own a storage facility. It's a great investment. I really like it, but you don't have the oligopoly that you have with mobile home parks, okay? So, what's mobile home park investing all about? This is what we think of, right? We got Trailer Park Boys, and has anybody seen this movie here? It's called Masterminds. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. It's a true story. It's absolutely brilliant. Owen Wilson lives in a high-rise double wide. And then, of course, this is the guys from Trailer Park Boys, which is one of my favorite shows. This is what most people think it's like, okay? This is what shows like Cops make it look like, okay? Shows like, Trailer Park Boys, Masterminds. But this is in reality kind of what most of them look like. This is a pretty typical park. It's not overly nice, it's not overly dumpy, it's just kind of a mobile home park, right? It's a pretty average, normal place. If you take a look, these people, they cut their grass, okay? They don't park on the grass. They keep their homes clean. They keep their garbage picked up. It's your average mobile home park is pretty nice. Now, am I going to stand up here and tell you that there aren't mobile home parks like you see in these shows? No. I went through a couple of them this weekend. They're out there. Believe me, they're out there. But they represent a tremendous, opportunity to make it look like this. See, the thing is that even when you go into a mobile home park and you've got people like that, most of the people in that park, they want it to look like this. Okay, so when you start making rules and kicking people out, they come out of the woodwork to thank you. You're like, man, I'm going to lose all these tenants, I'm going to have all these rules, and everybody's going to leave, and oh my goodness, it's going to be terrible. And next thing you know, 2 people are gone that were troublemakers, and everybody else is thanking you, telling you that this is the greatest thing that's ever happened. Now they're happy they can live in their home and their community and be happy, right? I mean, nobody wants to live around people that cause problems. How do you run a mobile home park? Ideally, this is all you're doing. I'm renting this lot. And this, in fact, is quite a sophisticated one. It's got a full pad. Most of the times you don't even have that. Okay? If HUD had anything to do with it, they'd all be like that, but that's another story. So you're renting a lot. You could have a concrete strip, you could have, or a pad, you could have strips, you could have just gravel. Indiana is, some of the most lenient. You could put it on ABS pads, for goodness sake. You've probably got some water underneath there, you've got some electric. These are electrical posts, and this is stub-ups for plumbing and such. And sometimes you own that, and sometimes you don't. Okay, so for instance, I've got a park, and I don't own anything. So there is, the power company owns everything from the pole up to this pedestal. Technically, I own the pedestal. The tenant owns everything from the pedestal to the home. You know what my pedestal is? It's a 4x4 with a metal box and a fuse panel. It's nothing, okay? Then the gas company owns right up to the meter. The tenant owns right from the meter to the house, because the meter's right at the house. Same thing with the water. Everything is direct billed to them. I have nothing to do with any of the utilities. I had a tenant, I almost called him a client, I think that's stretching a bit. I had a tenant, and they had some issues with the plumbing. And I said, well, call a plumber. He says, well, I did, and they said it was in the parks plumbing. I said, oh, okay, call the city, I don't know the plumbing. What do you mean? I said, well, who do you pay your water and sewer bill to? Oh, the city. Okay, so what are you calling me for? Oh, yeah, so he called the city, and guess what? They came out and fixed it. I literally own the dirt in that place. I own the street. Okay? I mean, that's ideal. That is like the unicorn. That's the one you want. But they're not all like that. You could own varying, differing degrees of utilities. And if there's one thing you got to get to know if you're going to buy these things, it's utilities. Because they'll kill you. They will absolutely murder you. Without any regret, they will destroy your entire portfolio, okay? You got to know your utilities. You got to know what kind, how, where, who, all that stuff. I mean, that's literally like a 10-hour session just talking about utilities. You got to know utilities, okay? Here we go. What are you responsible for? Site prep. Somebody bringing in a home, if they're going to bring in a home, you got to prep the site. All different kinds of laws. You got to know your local laws. It changes. It could change from county to county. It can change from city to city. Unfortunately, a lot of people are adopting HUD, and HUD is insane. They're out of their minds. It's about $7,000 to prep a site in accordance with HUD, which is obscene. Think about it. Adding $7,000, because you think the mobile home park owners are going to eat that? No. Nobody eats $7,000 of anything in investing, right? So HUD, trying to make it better for these low-income people, is actually costing them $7,000 more, which is a huge deal if you think about it. If somebody is right on the cusp of being able to buy this home, HUD comes in, adds $7 grand, now they can't. So they're working on that. Yes, sir?
What is the cost? I guess what is HUD doing?
So what HUD is doing, a couple of different things. Did you see the one with the whole pad? They want that to go on. That's a lot of money to put in this concrete. Okay, they also do something where, you know, a home, when it comes in, it gets jacked up off the ground, it gets leveled, and it goes up on these piers, and then it gets tied down. HUD wants concrete piers going down below the frost line on every spot where that hits the ground, which with a 66-foot box size, you've probably got about 40 of those. It's obscene. It's the stupidest thing ever. And the house that was stuck in a dirt farm, okay, with 4x4s and cinder blocks in 1958 is still there, and it hasn't rolled over yet. So why do we need this? Nobody knows. Nobody knows. But they're working on it, apparently. They're trying to find an actual solution, because the big question with the Mobile Home Manufactured Housing Institute, which is our lobbyists, is they're saying, why do we need more? Where's the data that says that what we're doing already isn't adequate? And there isn't any data. They did some, you know, the big hurricanes in Houston and Florida? They used them as case studies in our favor, because you looked at these neighborhoods, and all the stick-built homes were basically wiped out. All the mobile home parks, there's nothing wrong with them. They're 3 feet off the ground, and the water only got to 2.5 feet, so who cares? It was just like another day for them. They just didn't go out that day until the water went away. All the people in stick-built houses were swimming to grandma's. Okay, their house is destroyed. So they're like, well, these houses went through like the worst hurricane ever, and they're still there. So why do we need? And these were done in like the 70s and 80s, with none of this ridiculousness. So
Has HUD always been like that, or is it just something recent?
something recent. Yeah. Well, HUD has always had, well, I shouldn't say always, HUD has had that for a long time, but the problem is that every single municipality, they're like, what do you want us to do? And most of them were like, oh, either make up their own rules or they would adopt some standard from some other municipality, maybe a county, but they're getting lazy. And they're like, let's just do whatever HUD says, you do that. Now if the city would actually take a stand and look at it and have their own rules, or adopt rules that are sensible from their neighbor or whoever, we wouldn't have the issue. HUD is not automatically included everywhere. It's only when the municipality, whether it be county, city, state, some states, whole state, says we're going with HUD. Okay? So, site prep, that's the big issue there. Water, my goodness. So water, basically, you've got well water, you've got city water. Within well water and city water, you've got direct build, which is what I explained. So the city brings, or whatever municipality, brings in the water, they read the meters, they bill your tenants. You've also got where you've got a big meter out at the street called a master meter, and you pay the city one huge bill. But each of your tenants has a little meter, and you go and read and bill them. So you're kind of getting reimbursed, okay? Or some, this is a good thing, believe it or not, some mobile home park owners, for whatever reason, they just pay that bill, and there's no meters on these houses. Okay, so let's think about these numbers for a second. Some of these guys are paying like $3 grand a month for water, okay? $36,000 a year, okay? So you buy a park like that, and I'm pretty excited about that, okay? Why would I be excited about that? Let's say $3,600, so let's say that's 100 homes. It's going to cost me about, I would say maybe 40 to 60 grand, maybe 60 grand to put meters on all those houses. So what did I just do? For $60,000, I just collected 36 grand a year, okay? And $36,000, most parks trade at a 10K, okay? Most parks trade at a 10K. And, you know, obviously that goes all over the place. They're down to 4, they're up to 30. At a 10 cap, what is that? $360,000. I made $360,000 in profit plus an additional $36,000 a year by spending 60 grand. Where else can I do that? There aren't too many places I can do that. Okay? All right. So water, big deal. A lot of different ways. Well water kind of scares me. You know, something happens. They only test it like once a month. But what if something happens right after you test it? You've been poisoning like 100 people for a month. I don't like the idea of that. I stay away from it. But if you're comfortable with it and you know all about it and you become a well water expert, you can make a lot of money because a lot of people try and stay away from it, which means that you can buy those parks that have it a lot cheaper. Same goes for sewer. Okay? You got all different types of sewer. You've got city sewer, which is ideal. You've got, septic, which is terrible. You've got packaging plants, which are also terrible. You've got lagoons, which are pure death. Okay? I don't know if you know what a lagoon is, but this is no lie. All the waste comes out of these homes and goes into a giant lake. And it's sitting right there. Literally. You're waiting for me to say more, but that's it. I swear that's it. So all the feces and urine and everything else you can imagine goes in the pond, and then the kids are running around and the wind is blowing and yeah. Imagine, right? So here we are in 2018 and there's so many of these. How out of reality would it be for me to say, well, somebody eventually up at the White House or wherever they sit, talk about these things, is going to be like, this is just bad, man. We got to shut this down like today, right? And when they do, what are you going to do? So let's say that the sewer is 10 miles away, Yikes. I mean, it's craziness, okay? Even if you have city sewer, you can get yourself into trouble if you don't do your research, because they got what they call lifting stations. See, plumbers aren't as smart as pipe fitters, so they always have to, you know, put stuff up here so it runs downhill. They only figured out how to use gravity so far. Are there any plumbers in here? Joke's always better when it's plumbers. Anyway, so plumbing uses gravity. Okay, so if I've got a mobile home park that's here, and I've got a city sewer that's here, what do? It's called a lift station. So all the mung goes into a big pit, and it gets pumped up into this city sewer. Sounds great, right? What could go wrong? Yeah. When that pump goes out, what do you think's coming back the other way? Okay? So it doesn't take very long for this to become a disaster. And oh, by the way, when bad things happen, the EPA like fines you per day, thousands of dollars. Best to stay away, okay? But again, if you become a packaging plant expert, a lift station expert, and a septic expert, you could really just, you know, be a gazillionaire, because most people don't want to touch these things. So a park that would have otherwise traded at a 7 cap, you could probably buy it at like a 14. Literally half the price. And I am not making this up, okay? And they're easy to find when they look like that, okay? Because you're like all excited, oh my God, how many lots you have? How much you want for this thing? What's your sewer? Damn it, lagoon. You know what I mean? So lagoons are like, I don't even think about it, septic fields. So septic is kind of like based on Mother Nature. Remember we talked about Adrian destroying my investment portfolio by selling a bunch of cheap houses in my neighborhood? Well, Mother Nature's kind of like that. She doesn't care about you, okay? So when I have a sewage treatment system for 100 people that relies on her, if she has a bad day, it's going to ruin my world, okay? So I don't like that either. There have been updates and laws and things like that. People have literally, they've got a 100-space mobile home park, they've got a septic field. The government says you now need twice the capacity because of whatever insane reason. You just paid $8 gazillion for a 100-space mobile home park, and guess what? The government just turned it into a 50-space mobile home park. You have a good day. You know, so I don't know. I don't like that kind of stuff. But if you become the master of that kind of stuff, you can make a lot of money. Gas. What could go wrong with gas, right? For the most part, gas comes in your park. The gas company owns all the lines, up to the meter. Meter's right next to the home. You know, you might own some, like for instance, if the gas meter over here and I got to run it underground to the home, they'll own it where it comes out. But if the gas meter's right by the home, you don't own any of it, okay? Now, here's where you get in trouble. Master sub-meter. Remember we talked about the water? Giant meter out here, bunch of little meters. If you have a master sub-meter, that means anytime there's a gas leak, you are responsible. Now, I'm a pipe fitter, so I know the answer to this. But could you even imagine how often gas leaks in the ground? You're putting a metal pipe in the ground. It doesn't work very well over long periods of time. So you've heard of these stories where like small towns get leveled. How would you like to be responsible for that? I wouldn't. It's very sketchy to me, very scary. The other problem is most of those gas lines, if you have to replace them, guess where they are? They're under all the homes. So what are you going to do? You're either going to hand dig all these things, or you're going to move the homes out. Either way is very expensive, and it'll kill your investment, right? But, you know, electricity, yeah, same thing. You actually have, man, you know, you want to be an electricity company, be my guest. Just know that those things are out there. Don't just step into a park and think, hey, this is great. Boy, you know, those poles look a little sketchy. Boy, this electric company around here is pretty shady, aren't they? Well, guess what? It's not the electric company, it's the dude that owns the park, because he owns those poles. That's why they look like that. And they're probably wired and miswired, and he's probably got a fire every other day. So just know that if you get into these things, utilities is going to make or break it. So you've got to understand them, okay?
So if your utilities are direct billed to your tenants, and your tenants get behind or get evicted or whatever, and there's a past due balance, who's responsible for that? Is that you?
That's a fantastic question. So typically water, you're responsible for, but if they don't pay their gas or electric, they just come and shut it off. You're not responsible for that, because that's direct to them. Even direct bill, they will come back at you at some point. Now, I've never had an issue with it because typically they get a big enough deposit where they won't let it go on where it's outside of that deposit. But let's say some dude's lived there since 1970 and his deposit's like $8 because that was, you know, you could buy a used car for that back in the 70s. And now all of a sudden, you know, he's behind 2 months, well, $8 isn't going to get it. Yeah, they might make you pay that. But it all depends on the municipality. So, it's a good question. Now a lot of people, you hear me talk about the lot rent, right? And we're talking about $285. So I might have a park and it might have $225 lot rent. I might have one that's got $200 lot rent. I might have one that has $350 lot rent. So you're like, well, these numbers are kind of small, you know? I'm making like $900, $1,000, $1,200 on my houses or my apartments or whatever. What about that house? You were talking about maybe $600, maybe $700. Couldn't I make more? I mean, it's twice as much, right? You know, you can if you want. My personal experience is that no, you actually make more by not renting that home. Why do you suppose that is?
You have to fix everything.
You're gonna have to deal with inconvenience of keeping
Yeah.
up the
Let's say my home is 50% of my rent. Now, I don't have to tell you people what tenants can do to your properties, do I? Now, imagine if your property wasn't like some building in Whiting that was built in, you know, like 1910, it was built like a tank. Imagine if it was a tin can built in 1952 with like paper flooring. And the same tenant that ripped up your place got in that place. It's a pretty bad deal, okay? So, typically, any money that you make renting the home tends to just go right back in to managing headaches, all that stuff. Because why did I buy a mobile home park? So I didn't have to deal with toilets, lights, water leaks, all that stuff. Why would I want to get right back into that? Okay? So that's basically up to you, but I would say that most of the big operators don't deal with the homes. Some of them do, but there's a story behind that. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, wouldn't it make sense then the turnover rate is less, seeing that they're bringing their home and it's less convenient for them just to move out of your lot than
Exactly.
move out of your house.
So I buy a mobile home park. I come in, lot rent is $170, and the park pays for the trash collection, which is $10 per lot. I come in, I raise the rent up to $210 plus turn the rent or the garbage over the tenant. Okay, so what is that? $40, it's $50 a month. How many tenants do you think I lost?
15%.
None. I didn't lose any. Not one. Now, if you came in and you had a 40-unit apartment building and you raised the rent $40, how many tenants do you think you'd lose? Hard to say, but my guess, third. I think 25 is kind of the threshold in apartment buildings. Maybe it's a little higher these days, but it wouldn't be none. I can guarantee you that. Why didn't I lose any tenants? Everybody in that park that I bought owned their own home. So, here's a scenario. You own an apartment building. You come in and raise the rent. I'm your tenant. I don't like the fact that you raised the rent on me. I think I'm paying enough. How much does it cost me to move down the street to a guy who's probably about the same amount in rent? Even if it's $5 less, is it worth it for me to go? Yeah, sure. It takes a little bit of time, a little bit of gas. Now, if my neighbor mobile home park was $5 less a month, is it worth it for my tenant to move out? For him to take down that home, move it over there, put it back up, about $5,000. It'd take him 1,000 months to make, just to break even. It doesn't make any sense, okay? So when you come in and you raise the rent to market, the best thing you could do, which you would never do in an apartment building, is, is you basically, every park in the area, how much they charge, and their phone number. You say, I'm raising the rent because this is what the market is. If you don't believe me, go ahead and call yourself. Right? And they will. And they'll hem and haw, and they'll be mad. But what are you gonna do? I mean, okay, the other alternative is that we burn this place down and put a strip mall here, because now that's higher and better use. As long as we keep the rent up, you have a place to live. If the rent stays depressed, higher and better use takes over, this place is gone, where are you gonna go?
So Paul, if they own their mobiles, are you evicting or foreclosing if they don't pay their lot rent?
Beautiful question. Remember we talked about real property and chattel? This is personal property, folks. What happens if you evict somebody and they leave their personal property in your apartment building? They leave a car in your driveway. What do you do? Yeah. File for abandoned title. Get the writ. It becomes yours. That does, I mean, think about it. Let's say that's like the only thing they have. This place is worth 10 grand. And I say, you're going to get evicted because you didn't pay your bill. Let's think through this a moment. He's going to take my home because there's no way I can come up with 5 grand to move this thing in 30 days. It's just not possible. So he's going to own my home. I'm going to have nowhere to live, no money to go anywhere else. Maybe I should just pay my rent. Maybe that's why we have like 99% collections, you know? Yeah, so I have a park, and I literally had 100% collections for almost 2 years, just until last month. It's not unusual because of that reason. And who do you suppose that we get the most issues from? The home renters, right? Because it's inevitable. If you own a park, if you own enough lots, you're gonna own a home. It's just inevitable. Some lady's gonna move out, she's selling this thing dirt cheap, the park owner down the way is salivating because he's gonna buy this thing cheap and pull it out of your park. So what do? You give her 500 bucks more than he decided he was gonna give to her just to keep him from pulling it out, because you don't wanna pay that 4 grand to move it in, right? So even if I lost 4 grand on it, it's still a good deal. Oh, and by the way, let's say I paid 5 grand for a home, put $1,000 in it to make it nice, and I gave it to you. Am I making out? Let's say my lot rent is 200 bucks a month. I am making out if I give that home to him. So I don't have to make a bunch of money on it. I'd rather give it to him and have him be an owner, or give it to him for 500 bucks or 1,000 bucks. Something stupid, something that means something to him. I'm actually better off, right? Because that lot is worth about 24 grand. If you do the math, right? 200 times 12, 10 cap, $24,000 per lot. So what's a vacant lot worth? Nothing. Would you give somebody something that was $5,000 if they were going to give you 24 grand back? I'd do it all day long, twice on Thursday. Okay?
Do you own any of the homes that are on your property?
I do. I do something that's a little different. Kind of. So what I do, well, I'm trying to think if I've got. We're talking about management. This is Jim Leahy and Randy. I'll tell you what. He would actually probably make a really great manager, but he's not unlike most managers with the liquor. Randy, on the other hand, he's a little weird. But so mobile home park management, we'll tie that in. We'll tie that question in. So, do I own the home? Yeah, I do. Would I say, like if somebody came and said, I want to rent that home for 500 bucks a month, I would say no, I'm not doing that. I say, okay, well, I want to live there. I say, okay, here's what we'll do. You can pay 500 bucks? Yeah. All right. Lot rent is 250 bucks. Okay? You're going to give me 250 bucks also to live in that home. We're going to do what we call rent credit. Okay? Because I cannot, you guys all know about Dodd-Frank. I know you do. I can't write a mortgage on that home because even though it's not real property, it's still a primary residence, so Dodd-Frank presently still applies. They're trying to remove that. So I can't rent to own or mortgage that house, right? Which is kind of good because now I don't have to foreclose. If it's not a mortgage, I don't have to foreclose. I just kick them out. So here's what I do. Here's what some other people do. I have found to be extremely effective. Now, you're going to give me 250 bucks a month for lot rent. You're going to give me 250 to stay in the house. And every month you pay on time, I'm going to give you 70% of that money as a credit. No cash value whatsoever. If you pay late, even by 2 minutes, 1 month, you get no credit. If you leave, that credit is 0. But when that credit builds up to enough to where you can buy that home, it's yours. You get the title. And we agree on what that number is. Oh, and by the way, if there's another house you like better in my park, and you have enough credit to buy that one, feel free. Any home in the park. I mean, kind of makes people want to pay on time. You know, they get excited. Sometimes they just keep going and then they decide never to get the title, and you're like, listen, you have like way more than you need here. You could have the home. All you got to do is just do, that sounds like a lot of work to me. Whatever. Okay. And now you've got the seasoned person that's paying on time every month, and it's beautiful. Yes.
Now, you don't like dealing with the toilets. What happened with the toilet
No.
that's up in that house?
Good question. What do you suppose I write into that contract since it's rent credit?
They're responsible.
You're buying this house, people.
Yeah.
It's not my toilet. You can call me for it. Okay, now, if the AC goes out at about $2 grand, am I gonna let them, you know, what's gonna happen? They can't afford it, they're gonna disappear. So I'll pay for it. I won't agree to it up front or in writing, but I will. It'll be like, my furnace went out, we gotta move out, I can't afford it. I'll be like, listen, I'll be a real nice guy, you know. I'll put that in there for you, okay? And you will, you know, it's worth it for you, isn't it? You don't want to start this whole thing over. I mean, ideally, you really do want this person to get to the rent credit where they can buy the home. You really do. It's not an act, okay? You really do want them to own that home. I don't want any of them. If I can get rid of them all tomorrow, I would. So, you know, so be real diligent about your sales around tax time, because that's when they go, which is coming up. I mean, it's like starting now.
What is a mobile home?
Oh, man, it runs the gamut. I mean, you can buy them for 150 grand, believe it or not. Not in my park, but yeah, seriously.
Triple wide average.
Like some really nice parks in like some of these restricted parks, you know, with what was it 55 and older they call them.
Okay.
I mean, a home that would literally cost 10 grand in any mobile home park USA is like 75 grand in those parks. And you don't own the land. It's the stupidest thing ever. But I wish I could find a bunch of empty lots like that, and I'll just buy all these $5,000 homes and bring them down there. But I would say a decent home, 3 beds, clean, very nice, something that any of us would have no issue, at the least spend the night in, if not live in. It's 10, 12 grand. Yeah.
Paul, did you go in that White House last week at the trade show?
With the
one they called the White House?
Oh, the blue one, or the one by American.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
146,000.
It's insane. That thing was obscene. It was obscene. You look at some of these high-end Clayton, American, and Champion homes. It's like, dude, why am I living in a stick-built house? I want one of these. They're so cool. And you look at, like, you go to Clayton's factory. I don't know. Think about it. What I want, like, let's say if I want to go out and buy a new Chevy truck and Chevy sent all the parts and sent a couple mechanics to put it together in my driveway, I'd be like, there's something wrong here, okay? I mean, so some of these homes literally are better quality than stick-built, depending. I mean, 2x6 construction, everything's quality controlled, everything's, you know, indoors, you know, no rain. So mobile home park management, typically you get guys like this. You know, if you have bigger parks, you can usually get some pretty good people. How are we doing on time?
About 10 more minutes.
10 more minutes? All right. I want to get to valuation because that's important. Long and short of it, management, it's not the same, okay? Because per how many units, you don't make as much as an apartment. So you can have a real high quality manager in an apartment building because you can afford to pay them. Okay, not the same thing here. Your typical payment for a manager is like maybe free lot rent, which averages $280, $250, $280. Okay, and then you give them like $5 or $10 per occupied home. Okay, per month, right? So it's $500 to $1,000 depending on how big your park is. How many top end property managers are you going to get for that? Or none. You know, go ahead.
So how do you cope with the fact, like if proximity is not a factor in choosing it, so how do you go about a good property manager and any issue that comes up if you're far away?
First thing I do is when I buy a park, I talk to the owner, I say, who is the top shelf people here? and I go and talk to them. I also look at who's got the best lot, who's placed, because there's always a few in there that are like, I mean, they're everything's perfect, perfect. And you basically try and find the best manager within that park. Now, they're not managers as in managers that you guys think of. They are mall cops versus police officers. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. Now, depending on how big your park is and the quality of these people, you may get to a point where you can have a manager that can do some rent manager stuff, right? You know, on the computer. But small parks, not easy. Not easy. You got to have parks that are like 150, 200 spaces to start really getting like the quality that you guys are used to, managers. Okay, and that's a big park. It really is. It's millions of dollars. Okay, so that's management. So what are some of the key components, rules of thumb, and the pitfalls for valuation? Key components: population density. Okay, the MSA. Everybody know what that is? Metropolitan Statistical Area. Home prices, income, vacancy, home apartment. We said, you gotta know your area. You gotta know your area. Do I have the tenant base living around here? Am I gonna go buy a mobile home park that has 70 vacant pads in a town with 300 people? That's 2 hours from anything? Doesn't work. Now, same park in an MSA of 150,000, heck yeah, okay? Home prices, huge component, huge component. What drives low-income housing is regular housing. So if I can buy a home for $25,000, am I going to buy a trailer for $25,000? No. So home prices are huge. And in order to, so if my home prices are 80, 90, 100, 150, I start getting real excited. Because now I know that there's a huge need. Because let's face it, I don't care how swanky your neighborhood is, somebody there needs a low-income housing.
So you're talking about a coefficient of 4 to 1, 5 to 1, in terms of the
No,
price of a
no,
house?
I'm talking flat, like 80 grand and more.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is relative to the take $10,000 mobile home, right? And you're talking about 8 to 1. Because if you're talking a house value of 80,000.
It's not really a correlation, because in your same park you might have a house that you sell for 3 grand, you might have one you sell for 35. That's why I mean there's no like correlation. Now if every house in your park was the same price, maybe you can come up with something like that. But what I'm saying is, think about your average home in that park. I don't know, what does the park look like? Is your average home 10 grand, 20 grand, 30, 5? Now you look at the neighborhood and you think, who's going to buy this versus what's available? So if I pull up the MLS or Zillow or whatever, and I see a pretty dang decent 3-bedroom house that's like 1,100, 1,200 square foot, and they're asking like 42 grand, I'm like, you know, and there's like 20 of those, I'm not interested. I'm done. I'm out.
I guess let me rephrase the question. You would want a relationship between the prices in the area that you're looking to buy to be at least 8 times, more than 4 times the value of the property in a mobile trailer park. So if you're talking about $10,000 bucks of mobile trailer, right, and $80,000 price for a property, that would make it attractive.
You could say that. Like I said though, what makes that really difficult is the vast range of actual cost of a home. I know that's kind of a weird concept because you think about homes, apartment buildings, it's like how could, you know, you could literally have a home sitting here that's $45,000 and the one right next to it's worth 2. So that's why I'm saying that you can't really.
Okay.
But I know where you're going, and I wish that it was that simple. My thought is, figure worst case scenario, you got to bring a brand new home in. Which one are you going to put in there? How much is it going to be? It's got to be a 3-bed. You know, maybe it's going to be 25 grand. Maybe it's going to be 30. Okay, so do I want to be like 3 times that? Okay, because if I can go buy a home for 40, are they going to buy the mobile home for 30? If I can buy a home for 50, 30,
You're talking
60,
about a single family home, not in the in the park.
It's got to be a pretty decent spread to make it worth it for them. What would it be? What would make it worth it for you? Right? I have to live in this town. I want my kids to go to this school district because that's where it's at. That's what I want. Okay? I cannot afford this house, so I'm going to buy this mobile home.
Okay.
If I can afford that house, I'm not even thinking about it.
Okay.
Okay. Vacancy, your average vacancy, in the US, you just want to make sure you're not like 5 times that, because supply and demand. Eventually, even if all these homes they're asking 100 grand, if you have 40% vacancy, guess what those $100,000 houses are going to do eventually?
Come down.
Yeah, big time. They got to. They've got to. Unless some, you know, huge investor is just owning them and sitting on them and letting them rot, which probably isn't. Okay. Home apartment rent. You kind of have to figure that your lot rent is typically about half of what your 2-bed rent is. So what does that mean? That means I want my 3-bed rent to be about $1,000, okay, and I want my 2-bed rent to be at least $600. Okay, you always want to look at. You really don't want to buy a mobile home park that has $100 lot rents, and let's say that is the market rent, $100. And believe me, they're out there. Here's the reason: you could never put a new home on it. Remember we talked about the value of that lot? You never want to put a home on that lot that's worth more than that lot. Because let's say I made $1 on that home. I'm still breaking even. If you put a $40,000 home on a $20,000 lot, you're asking for trouble. Okay? Does that make sense?
No, can you repeat that again?
You don't want to put a home on a lot that exceeds the value of the lot. The value of the lot is the lot rent times 12 months
Okay.
divided by your cap rate, whatever it is.
Okay.
Okay? It's probably somewhere between 8 and 12.
Okay.
Okay? Any other questions on that part? Because I know that, you know, we start talking about numbers. Okay. So, biggest thing, MSA, your market, your metro, that's number one. Who's going to buy these things? If nobody's there to buy them, I don't care how cheap or expensive they are.
The reason for it being that you don't want a house that it's more expensive than the lot is, that it becomes an issue with?
Yeah, it becomes an issue if I sell this thing for, it's 40 grand brand new, right?
Yeah.
I sell it once. And before they pay it off, guess what happens? I own it again, for whatever reason. Now they've tore it up a little. I got to put a couple bucks in it. Now I sell it again. Now instead of 40, I'm selling it for 30. Okay? Now I get it back again. So maybe this happens 4 times. And by the time it's all said and done, I just give the damn thing away. I'm still good, right? Because the home, let's say the home was, if my lot rent was at least like $400. If my lot rent was $400 in that scenario, I would not lose money. And here's the other thing. When I sell that place, I'm getting all my money back for that home because my lot is worth that much.
Sure.
Based on that cap rate.
Okay.
Does that make sense now?
Yeah, yeah.
So that's kind of a rule of thumb. I mean, if you go over it by 5 grand, it's whatever. It's your part. Do what you want. So you take your lot count. Obviously, you got to only take occupied ones. You take your utilities, because utilities, where they become important, is a typical mobile home park with all direct billed utilities, or even master sub-metered water. Typical expense ratio is around 30%. I know that sounds low to you guys. It's beautiful, isn't it? If you have private utilities like city or well water and septic system, it's usually around 40%. So basically, if you want to go in and you want to do a quick evaluation, you take your lot count occupied by your lot rent, multiply it by your expense ratio of 30 or 40%, depending on what the utilities are. Okay? And then you apply that over 12 months and then apply your cap rate. Okay? You have to know your cap rate, obviously, which you can kind of start taking guesses based on the metros. The really, really good ones are 7. California's like 4. You know, maybe Florida's probably 6. And like Alabama's like 14. Okay? And then you start looking at other things. What's my billing type? Okay? Because these are going to add expenses. Do I have to have somebody do the billing for me? I look at my park-owned homes because they do hold value. I mean, if I'm buying a park and the park itself is worth X amount of dollars, oh, by the way, we don't even talk about I don't put the home rent in that number. Because remember we said the home rent, you kind of lose it all anyway? When I'm factoring my numbers, I do not factor in home rent. It goes away. It goes away, gone. I'll buy the homes, but I won't buy the home capitalized over the home rent. Could anybody figure that out? Like why? quick math. So let's say we talked about a home's like $300, right? So maybe the average home is maybe 10 or 12 grand, I told him. And we talk about a home rent, the average is about $300 according to there. So now you take $300, apply our formula, times 12 months is 36. And I said your average mobile home park is 10 cap. You want to buy a mobile home for 36 grand? It's only worth 12. I got a bunch of them for you. Okay, so you have to take that out of there. Now, if the home's worth 12 grand, by all means, you could add the value of the homes after you've factored in the value of the park. But capitalizing the homes is the #1 mistake new investors kill themselves. Kill themselves. You capitalize homes and you got a bunch of them, man, you're going to own that thing for 50 years before you're going to. I mean, you can find a bigger fool. Remember I said, I kind of giggled and I said some of these big players are starting to rent. It's because they're hoping that this barrage of big investors that don't know what they're doing are going to capitalize the home rent. True story. And guess what? They're probably right, which is insane. Those people are going to get stuck holding that bag, and it's going to be ugly. So if you're going to invest in any REITs or funds that do mobile home parks, look into their portfolios, make sure they don't do that.
Is there anything depreciable on this? Does depreciation fall into the mobile homes?
Yeah. You depreciate homes just like you would a computer, car. There's a depreciation schedule.
Right?
Excuse me?
It's the trailer you can depreciate?
Yeah, if you own it, sure. So here's the beauty. What's your depreciation schedule? 27 and a half years, right? And some commercials like what, 30 something? But your typical is 27 and a half years. Typical depreciation on a mobile home park is more like 10 or 15. Isn't that nice? Okay, so here's why. Real estate is 27 and a half years. Most mobile home parks don't have much real estate. They have dirt, which you cannot depreciate. So if I buy a park for $1 million and as vacant land it's only worth 100 grand, I've got $900,000 to depreciate and I don't have a structure. So you have things like roads and fences and pipe, which is like 5, 10, and 15 year depreciation. And then you probably can come up with about 30, maybe another 200,000 or 300,000. So then you've got like 600 grand left. It's called goodwill. What goodwill is the value of the business. That's so basically you depreciate this thing in about half the time, which means twice as much. Which means it's a good idea to be a broker so that you can be a real estate professional if you have other income, because otherwise you're pretty much almost guaranteed to dip below every year. Otherwise. All right. Capital improvements, you want to factor those in before you buy it, okay? If I got to put $100,000 into this thing, and if I'm buying it for $900,000, you're really buying it for $1 million, right? If it's worth 1.2, still a good deal. If it's worth 900, you're overpaying. Factor in your capital improvements on the front. That's the same with any commercial real estate. All right, mobile home park rules of thumb, save you time, park-owned homes. Basically, rule of thumb. Here's a good one. If it's private utilities, I take lot count times lot rent times 70. That'll give you a real quick rule of thumb. This is not a number to make you make an offer. This is like if you're looking at 5,000 listings and you need a way to like get through them really quick. And then if you go to the one, let's say that there's one that's a private utilities, well, septic. You do lot rent times lot count times 60. That works out to be about a 12 cap. So if that number that they're asking is within 20% of that, you're like, hey, this one might be worth looking into a little bit more detail, okay? That's a quick rule of thumb. If you want to get a little more detail, you take your lot rent, multiply it by your lot count, times your 12 months, and then you plug in your expense ratio, okay? And then these are just rule of thumb numbers that kind of get you to a point of, should I even look closer at this thing? Do you have a question? Yeah, go ahead.
So, average, you said about $250 a month on the lot rent. So
Yep.
is there an average price you want to pay per lot then? I mean, based on that evaluation, is it like 20,000?
Yeah, it's like 20,000. I mean, if you could also do it that way, but problem with that is that there's some differences in different areas.
Yeah, sure.
So, you know, if you're in Ohio, like lot rents in Ohio are really high, lot rents in Indiana are really low, so how do I reconcile that? You know what I mean? But if you're looking in like one area and the lot rents are all pretty much the same and you come up with this like 18,000 per lot and you factor that out, it's a quick way to get you going. I mean, we work in like 7 states, so it's not possible.
Is there a better state to find in?
I like Indiana because of taxes, because it's easy. Problem with Indiana is there's a lot of park-owned homes and there's a ton of vacancy and a lot of low lot rent, really low. Okay, and there's a lot of rentals, which means that maybe this guy owns this thing, it's only worth a couple grand, he's like, screw it, he's just gonna go rent one, you know? It's a little tough, you know? Illinois, it's not bad, you know? Ohio has really high lot rents, but their EPA sucks. It's terrible.
How's Florida?
I don't know much about Florida, it's kind of a specialty, okay? So like the Midwest and Great Plains states, that's kind of like high school football. Okay, and then like you go to like, you know, East Coast a little bit, and the Rockies and Arizona, and you know, now you're into college football. You go to California, and then you go to Florida, and now you're in like NFL.
So South Carolina, North Carolina?
No, not North and South Carolina. That's halfway between high school and college. That's good.
How's Alabama?
Alabama's like 2nd grade. Well, here's the reason. Here's the reason. It could change. Here's the reason, okay? So here's why Alabama's tough. You find this beautiful park. It's in a phenomenal area. The demographics look perfect. City water, city sewer. You're like, this is the greatest park in the world. And you walk in and you say, okay, I want to buy this thing. How much is your lot rent? $98. $98. How do you make any money on that? I mean, and it's like, okay, well, this could be phenomenal because I could raise it to 300 because everybody else has to be higher. And you go to everybody else and they're also at $100, $120. So, I don't know. It's a little risky because now you're restricted on your homes. So if you got a $100 lot rent, you don't want to spend more than 12 or 15 grand on a home. You're like, you certainly can't put a brand new 3-bed Clayton in there for 40 grand. I mean, you'd be killing yourself. So it's not just Alabama's. Some of those southeast, other than Florida. You know, I don't really work in it. I basically do Illinois, every state that borders it, Ohio, Michigan, Minnesota, Kentucky. Or no, Kentucky borders Illinois. I'd like to get into Texas, North and South Carolina too. Just haven't gotten there yet. All right. Pitfalls, we talked about park-owned homes, we talked about master metered, we talked about private utilities. Anybody have any questions about those things? Okay, park-owned homes, just remember, don't capitalize them because you'll end up paying 40 grand for a home that's worth about 3. And everybody's going to make you do it. Every broker in the business is going to capitalize those homes. And they're going to say, well, this park is worth $900,000 because, you know, look at the income. The income's 90 grand a year. I'm like, yeah, but 40,000 of that is from the homes. This park's only worth $500,000 plus whatever those homes are worth, which might be 50 grand, it might be 200 grand. It certainly isn't 400. I guarantee you that. Okay, so that's huge.
You said for regarding utilities for the power lines,
yeah,
the poles and all that, you own that.
Well, it depends. I mean, a lot of them are direct billed, they're owned by the utility company, but parks exist where there's one huge meter at the street, and then you own all the distribution to the homes, and it's like Freddy Krueger style nightmare stuff. You know, it's terrible. I wouldn't want to do it. I don't want to be a utility company. In fact, I found a couple guys at this show we just went to that go out and do all your utility reading and billing and stuff, and like Indiana, for instance, they only allow you to charge $4, and these guys do it for the $4. You're like, what am I missing here? This is the greatest thing ever. I'm gonna hire you guys. I wish I had 10 more parks to hire you for. So, haven't hired them yet, but we'll see what happens. Sign it up so they can bill my water. Any other questions? Conclusion: future holds lots of money. If you buy mobile home parks, you know, it's not the only way to go. Obviously, you guys know a lot of things about a lot of different styles. It's not for everyone. It's never going to be quite as passive. You know, if you own a 200-unit primo A-class apartment building, I mean, you could literally kick back on a beach and never talk to anybody about it. it's not really the way it is with mobile home parks. You've got to be a little more involved just because of the whole manager aspect we talked about. You just can't get that quality unless you're a huge operator. Obviously, Sam Zell's probably got managers that make $340,000 a year. They're very good at what they do. So, a lot of people that work in apartments. So, if you guys are multifamily investors, be very careful, because some of the biggest disasters are people that were very successful in apartment buildings, and then they ran their mobile home parks like vertical apartment buildings. It's a huge mistake. Okay, just remember that for you multifamily guys. Knowledge is the key. You got to learn, and there's a lot of information out there. Basically, anything you guys want to know, I'll be here afterward. Answer any questions you have. Sir.
What would you say is the minimal economical size for somebody starting out with a
That's hard to say. I mean,
well, I guess
because of the manager aspect, like, you know, you could own a 40 space, 35, 40 space, and have a decent manager, so you don't have to live anywhere near this thing, okay? You get smaller than that, and maybe there's one good manager in there, and if you lose them, you're going to be dealing with this. So then it becomes geographical. But if you're buying nothing but 100 space parks, it doesn't matter where they are. They could be in Alaska, you can live in Florida. It's irrelevant.
How do you find motivated mobile park owners?
Yeah, motivated is not a word I'd use for anything. Here's the funny thing. So, Millionaire Next Door, they should have talked to these guys, because these guys are literally, most of them are worth millions of dollars. I mean, like big time, like 10, 12, 15 million bucks. They still drive beat up pickup trucks, they still have holes in their pants, they wear boots, and it's not about money. So if you came in and talked to this seller, and you guys were talking about $500,000, and then he came in and offered $700 for the same one, it could be irrelevant. Price is irrelevant. It's about, do they trust you? Do they like you? Most of the time. You know, some of them will try to get more money, but at the end of the day, they'll walk away from $250,000 if they like you rather than you. It's not unusual. Yeah, absolutely. So,
Awesome.
any other
Thank
questions?
you.
Time.
The biggest thing I heard over and over again was do your due diligence. Just like anything that you're investing in, make sure you know what you're getting into before you sign on the dotted line. So, anybody have any deals? Anything that they're looking to sell, wholesale? Anyone looking for a joint venture? Anyone need money, have money? Now is your time, or forever hold your peace. Al.
Hi, my name is Al Perez. I'm looking to buy a few more houses, so if there's any wholesalers in the room, or if you own some properties in Northwest Indiana, I'm looking to buy about 3 or 4 more houses. So.
Any particular neighborhoods?
Yeah, typically Maryville, Highland, Griffith. I'll go as far east as Portage. I kind of stay out of Gary, East Chicago area, but anything in Maryville, Highland, Griffith, Dyer, Munster, Sheridan.
Southampton and Tessville?
Yeah, like
He's scared of those areas.
163rd and South.
Okay.
On your lean thing here, is this state of Indiana, Lake County, everybody?
That's Indiana.
This is not, it doesn't matter Illinois,
No,
just Indiana.
correct.
And obviously, I didn't say it, but any of you guys come across mobile home parks, let me know. I'll make sure, you know, if you think you might, especially wholesalers. A lot of times wholesalers come across these things, like, what do I do with this, you know? Let me know. Yeah, absolutely. And if you guys might come across a mobile home park in your travels and you think that might be something, let me know. I'll give you my contact info.
What's your criteria?
My criteria for myself is 50 and over. MSA of 50,000, home rent, or excuse me, 3-bed, like $950,000 for 3-bed rent, and say $85,000 home price, and vacancy not more than a couple points over the national average. But I do have buyers for all kinds of stuff. So if you come across something that's really janky, you're like, what, you know, you're not sure what to do with it, I might know somebody who wants it. But the guys that I that that are in my network that like vacant stuff, they go big. I mean, they've got like $20 million that they need to deploy, like spend right now. So they don't want like 10 space, they want like 300 space. So if you come across something that's really huge, really empty, I do have people that are looking for those very aggressively.
They have a few parks, so.
Yeah, I talked to them down at the Louisville show.
Where at?
Anybody wants to, try to flip a mobile home, I got plenty of them.
That, I'll tell you what, you know, you guys, there's ways to make a good buck on the homes themselves. Like John Fedro, that's the guy. You guys are probably all in Bigger Pockets. Check him out. He does the homes themselves. So if you're looking to get in the mobile home park business with like $5 grand, you can do it. You know, it's nothing I would do because of the work. But if that's where you're starting, that's what you need to do. You need to put the work in. You need to start somewhere. And becoming what they call a Lonnie dealer for a park owner could be very lucrative. You know, I'm not saying it's a long-term deal, but it could be very lucrative, build you up to something else.
Is there a TV show about that yet? Flipping mobile home parks?
Jeez, there should be.
I mean, let's do it. I mean, that's where the money is. Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, you know, I kind of gave you numbers, and when I talked about that was a very real scenario that I told her. And I don't know if you guys caught that, but what's the interest rate I was charging her for that home?
30%.
30%.
I do the same thing at 25.
30% interest rate, and guess what? So people that live in mobile homes, they don't buy by the price. They buy by monthly payments, don't they? So if I got a home that's worth $5 grand and I sell it to them for 12 at 30% interest, as long as they can afford it.
Like a car payment. People want to know the payment.
Bingo.
So they'll buy a
That's
$40,000 car when they
That's
went in to buy
exactly right.
20 because the guy got the payment down to where
That's
they
right.
had.
And because of the fact that it's a rent credit, I mean, I don't think Indiana has usury, but even if they did, it's not usury because it's not an interest rate.
They don't have a usury.
Yeah. I didn't think they did. So.
Any other deals? Anyone looking for anything?
I'm Jack Barco. My cash is tied up right now, but I might be looking for some private money for buy and hold, so probably just 6 months or something like that, maybe less, maybe more.
Any interest that you're looking to pay, any amount?
Start low.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it really depends on, I mean, I don't want to pay points and I don't want to pay that high interest, ideally 12%, but I mean, it's up for negotiation, I guess.
The long term?
No, short term, like probably 6 months, 7 months tops. It depends on how much I'm paying for whatever I'm buying, so.
How much are you looking for?
I don't have a number right now. It depends on the deal. So, like if I found something for 80K, I'd probably pay you back in 3 or 4 months because I refinanced what my money's tied up in right now. But if it was worth more, I might wait 6 months. Just kind of depends.
And then, if it's between meetings and you have something, just post it on the Facebook group. If you're looking for something, without going into names, you know, Nicholas found his lender through this group on the page, or maybe one of the other pages we have. So don't hesitate to post off up on there. This past week there was a post on the group page about someone in the group that is buying a duplex down in Lowell, inheriting some tenants that aren't really the best tenants, and he had a couple of questions about how to get them out, how to maximize his return down there. And it just happens to fit that someone who was responding apparently works in the legal field and was saying that a lot of the suggestions were illegal without actually giving any concrete evidence as to why it was illegal. So next month, and we've had this booked for a while, we have attorney Jonathan Peterson out of Munster. He's an investor. He's actually in the middle of actually almost completed writing a book for attorneys on investment law. Or something like that. So he's going to talk next month, and he specifically, because real estate law is very, very broad, he could spend a week talking about 1,000 different things. We're specifically going to talk about rentals, so the leasing, evicting, different ways that investors get burned. He does a bunch of different types of investments himself. He works with a bunch of investors. So he's going to talk a lot about that. Anyone in here use his lease? It's good. I mean, because he's an investor, he has an ironclad lease. All of the bad experiences he's had with landlords in court in ways that they've got burned or had a hard time evicting tenants, that's all in his lease. So he's going to talk about the key things that you need in the lease and then other issues to try to be proactive about so you don't get burned in court if that happens. When I got into investing a couple of years ago, someone in this group actually told me, you're not working hard enough if you've never been sued. So you definitely want to have a good attorney on your side. So he's going to come share all of his experience. We're going to be back here next month. Who likes this space better than our office? It's a little bit bigger. You're not really cramped. So we'll give this space a couple more months, try and see how it goes. The space where we're in December, it's just not economical for us to be there. It's like $250 a month to be there, and it's just not economical to do that. So we'll give this place a try a couple more months. Feel free to stay as long as you want tonight. If you want to grab adult beverages over there, that's okay. Talk with Tracy. She's got to sign you in.
I just got to sign in.
So feel free to go over there, grab stuff, bring it back here. We have the room to about 10 tonight, so network with people. If you've been here a couple of times, go introduce yourself to someone that you don't know. And is it okay if someone emails me to send them your slides?
Yeah, why don't you do that, and go ahead and give them my contact info as well, because it'll keep me from having to go out to the car and get my cards.
I'll do that. So if you're interested in the slides or the video for tonight, email group@investnwi. Real quick on the membership, if this was your first time, it was free. If you want to come back next month or any months after that, it's $10. Or you can do an annual membership. It's $90 for a person, $135 for a couple or a partner, a business partner, whatever you want to call your partner. The membership benefits allow you to have access to all the videos. Even if you're not here, you don't have to pay for them. So again, next month, it's February 19th. That is the third Monday of the month. Not the fourth Monday like we did today. We're going to have Attorney Peterson. So thanks for coming again. Feel free to stay, network, pass cards, make deals, finish up the pizza so I don't have to bring it home and get any more heartburn.